Hi, in this video we're going to look at what some would say is the darker side of Games Workshop. Games Workshop is a juggernaut of the wargaming industry. It commands a significant presence within the hobby. And with its iconic systems of Warhammer and Warhammer 40k, the universes the companies have amassed quite a large dedicated following of enthusiasts worldwide. Now, however, beneath the surface of this seemingly untouchable empire lies what some would say a divisive influence on the hobby of wargaming. So in this video, we'll just delve into some of the reasons why Games Workshop's dominance may be detrimental to the broader wargaming community. Now, one of the major primary criticisms that have been levelled against Games Workshop is its monopolistic approach to wargaming market, it aggressively protecting its intellectual property and limiting competition, and that the company stifles diversity and innovation within the hobby. Independent game developers and smaller wargaming companies struggle to compete with Games Workshop's vast resources and established fan base, leading to a homogenization of the hobby. Now, Games Workshop products generally come with quite a hefty price tag, which makes them quite inaccessible to a lot of hobbyists, particularly younger individuals or those on a tight budget. The cost of assembling a sizable army can quickly escalate and put quite a remarkable strain on most hobbyist wallets. Now, this high barrier to entry not only limits the hobby's accessibility, but also contributes to a sort of a elitist style culture within certain segments of the whole community. Now, one of the other things that some critics have laid at the Games Workshop's door is the rule complexity and power creep, and they say that these are significant drawbacks. With every new edition or codex release, the rules become either increasingly convoluted, alienating casual players and newcomers to the hobby, or additionally, power creep, and this is where the gradual increase in the effectiveness of new factions or units compared to older ones, and this can sort of create an imbalance and frustration amongst players, leading to a sense of disillusionment with the game. Now, Games Workshop relies on its chain of branded retail stores and online sales channels, and has often drawn criticism for its exclusivity. Independent hobby stores often struggle to compete with Games Workshop's direct-to-consumer model, and this leading to closures and decline in local gaming communities and in often places gaming stores. Moreover, the company's strict policies regarding third-party retailers limit consumer choice and tends to hinder the growth of alternative gaming spaces. Now, while Games Workshop's lore is quite rich and expansive, there have been many critics that argue that it often lacks diversity and inclusivity. The portrayal of certain factions or characters can perpetuate harmful stereotypes or reinforce outdated tropes, alienating some marginalized members of the community within the hobby. They say a lack of representation and inclusivity in the narrative can discourage potential players from engaging with Games Workshop's universes and contribute to a less vibrant and diverse gaming community overall. Now, while Games Workshop is undoubtedly a massive influence on the wargaming hobby, its dominance is not without its drawbacks. From monopolistic practices to high costs and rule complexity, the company's approach to the hobby has garnered criticisms from many quarters. Now, as the wargaming community continues to evolve, it's essential to recognise and address these concerns to ensure a more inclusive, diverse and sustainable future for the hobby. Now, while I recognise there is a high cost to a lot of Games Workshop, you also get a high quality. Games Workshop's contributions to the wargaming hobby are undeniable. It's essential to examine the impact and consider how the company has shaped the hobby over the years. You have to realise that a lot of the companies we now have, such as Warlord Games, Mantic, and stuff like that, they wouldn't have happened, or they may not have happened, without Games Workshop, because most of the staff learned their craft and they gained a lot of experience in working within the industry by working in Games Workshop before setting up their own companies. Is there a lack of diversity within the Games Workshop lore? Probably. You have to remember that things like 40k were born out of the 80s, and it was essentially a satirical look at what was going on around that time. And yes, that lore has evolved over the years, but that's still fundamentally the sort of backbone of 40k lore. So there are some things that were included in 40k back then that probably wouldn't get included now if they were making it from scratch. And there would be stuff that would be included now that if you go 20, 30 years ahead, wouldn't get included then. So, you know, they're a product of their time, and they do adapt and change the lore and stuff like that as and when. Does this create toxic communities within hobby? Unfortunately, yeah. That's the nature of the beast, I'm afraid. If you go to look at other strong IPs like Star Wars, there's a toxic element within that fan base. I think most fan bases will have a toxic element. You can't get away from it. There will be members that are unpleasant because that's human nature. No matter where you go in life, you always meet people that aren't the nicest of people. And I personally just tend to avoid those types. I think one of the biggest issues around a lot of people have with Games Workshop is price, and it's getting into the hobby. If you're going into wargaming and you wanted to go into 40k or Age of Sigmar, the cost of entry is quite high, and it's always been high. And I know in recent years they've tried to address that by bringing out those different starter sets for 40k and AOS, you know, where there are different price range of starters, which I think is a good thing. And then they've got things like combat patrols and stuff like that, which reduces the cost. I mean, but if you're going to be in this hobby for a long time, you're going to spend a lot of money, and it doesn't matter whether you're in the hobby just in Games Workshop games, but in the hobby in general, you're going to spend a lot of money. I mean, those are those shelves. I mean, I've been in the hobby since '83. I don't even contemplate how much I've spent on this hobby over the years. It's an expensive hobby. Most hobbies are expensive. There are cheaper ways into wargaming. There are cheaper ways to go into 40k or AOS. You could go in via the sort of skirmish level games and work your way up. You could go into Warcry. You could go into Kill Team, things like that. There are good and bad sides of Games Workshop. There always has been. With any company of that scale, it doesn't matter what the product is, you will always find good aspects and poor aspects of the company. It's just the nature of things, I'm afraid. Once they get to a certain size, they kind of, from where they started to once they go to the scale of like Games Workshop is, they're not the same companies anymore. And you have to understand that Games Workshop is a business, so they'll operate like a business, and they are on stock exchange. So they have shareholders, and they have to work for those shareholders and stuff like all those sort of things. So there's a lot of things that they probably do that we as hobbyists don't like. but that's just the nature of the beast, I'm afraid. Anyway, that's all for this week. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I shall see you next time.